everyone, my name is Cindy and I'm a Patron Services Associate here at Paul Sawyer, and today I am going to show you how to make a little cross-stitch bookmark. Our sample looks like this. Put that closer. The one you're going to get is going to be about 2.5 inches wide and then 7 long. My little sample is a little bit smaller than that, but this is the exact pattern that you're going to make. And you can, there'll be a variety of colors, so everyone's probably going to end up looking a little bit different. And if you have any extra embroidery floss you want to add on to it, you can. So you've been given all of the items that you need to make this pattern. And so first off, you're going to definitely have a pattern with you. I've also made a little pamphlet that shows you how to cross stitch. So if you've never cross stitched before, you'll definitely want to look at that pamphlet. And even if you have, the pattern is very important. So we have our pattern. You'll want to make sure that you got your embroidery floss. The one I'm working with today is blue, but you'll likely have a different color. You'll also want to make sure that you find your needle. Let's put that against my shirt so you can see it a little bit better. Yeah, there we go. And just make sure you have one of those. If your needle breaks for some reason, you can get any kind of needle, but try to make sure that it has like a little bit of a wider hole here at the top, because that works better for cross-stitching and embroidery. And then you'll also want to make sure that you have your Ida cloth, your little piece. Everyone's getting a piece. It's 4 inches by 9 inches, so it's more than big enough to make this pattern. And then finally, one thing we didn't include in the kit, but you want to make sure you have, is a pair of scissors. You're going to need these scissors to cut the thread, but hopefully that's something that you'll just have lying around. Now, there are some optional items that you might want to have just to make it a little bit easier. If you have like a pin cushion or a needle minder or even just a magnet, those are really helpful. Oops, let me get my needle back. Because you can, this is a needle minder. It helps mine the needle. So you can put your needle on it and not lose it. Or if you have a magnet or a pin cushion, you can do the same. And then one thing I really like when I'm cross stitching is an embroidery hoop, which you can easily get at like Walmart, Joann's, Michael's, anywhere. They're usually really cheap, especially the smaller ones. They might cost you like between 70 cents to $3, depending on the size that you want to get. And these are helpful because you can clip your fabric inside and it'll hold it taut for you. So it makes it just a little bit easier. I also think it prevents some hand cramping, but you don't necessarily need that. And if you don't have it, that's okay. I'm going to be showing you how to do this without using one of my embroidery hoops, just in case you don't have one. Okay. So the very first thing we need to do is we need to divide up the thread. Okay, so we've tied it together so it's easy to use. So just loosely undo that knot and then take one of the lengths of thread. You'll have 4 of them, which is more than you need, but make sure you just have one. And each thread is actually made up of 6 tiny threads. This is going to be hard to see on my camera, but you can see I'm pulling apart the thread. So each thread has 6 little threads all wound up together to make it. And you're going to need to separate out 2 of these threads. So you can see that I'm taking this and I'm pulling apart those 2 threads. Just go slowly so you don't accidentally make a knot or anything like that. It'll take a few seconds, but it shouldn't be too terribly hard. And remember, you have plenty of thread, so if you tangle something up, feel free to cut it. Also, if you personally think these threads are too long, feel free to cut them shorter. I like them at this length because then I don't feel like I have to continually grab more thread. I feel like it's long enough that it doesn't get too tangled, but not too short. So it's usually about the length of my arm. It's hard to see. If you look at my forearm, you can see that there's thread there, and that works for me, but you can make it shorter if you want. If you buy your own thread in the future, you can also make it longer. All right, after we get our 2 pieces of thread, we're gonna want to thread our needle. You can get a needle threader if you want, but I find it helpful just to use good old-fashioned saliva. So you wet the end of it, so it's hard to tell. There we go. Put it on my face because you might be able to see it on my face. And so you wet the end, and then you take your needle, once again, there we go. And you're gonna try to just thread it on through. Might have to wet it a couple times, might have to get somebody to help you with this process. You could also use water if you don't want to use saliva, but you can thread it. And so it'll look, here we go, it'll look like that. Notice that there is a short part hanging. Do not tie it at this point. You just want to leave a few inches hanging. I usually leave about 4 inches because it's not like normal hand stitching. You don't want to double it over or anything like that. You want to leave it the way it is. Okay, so we got our needle threaded. And now we're ready to start stitching. So like I said, this little piece of fabric that you have here is 4 by 9 inches, but your finished bookmark pattern is really only about 2.5 by 7. So you're going to end up with a good deal of white space, which is good. Now normally what I tell people to do and what I do is find the center of your fabric and start from there. Because if you start from the center, you make sure that your pattern is perfectly centered. And that means you won't like go too close to an edge or waste any of your fabric. But since we've measured this out, we know fairly well where the center is. And also, if it's a little bit askew, that's okay. And then finally, this particular pattern is a little bit complicated to do if you start in the center because you're gonna have to start with the letters. So for all of my newbie cross stitchers, we're gonna start at the edge. So what I'm gonna do, I'm sorry, I thought I had a ruler around here, but it looks like I have placed it somewhere else. So we're gonna do just kind of a quick eyeball instead. All right. So you can, since it's supposed to be 7 inches long and the fabric is 9 inches in, we're gonna start on one of the short edges and we're gonna start 1 inch in. So you can either take a ruler and measure 1 inch in, or you can take your knuckle, which is your index knuckle is approximately 1 inch in, and measure it. That means that the edge of our pattern is going to be approximately here. So it's going to be approximately there. And then from the top, you're going to measure down about about 3/4 of an inch. So that'll cross right about there. And so if you do 3/4 of an inch down and 1 inch in, that will get you to this square right here in the corner, your outermost edge. And that's where I want us to start, because these outer stitches are very consistent, they're very easy, and they're a really good way to practice your cross stitching. If we start here in the letters, those can kind of confuse people. So I want to start right here on the edge. Okay. So we hold it in our hand and we take our thread. I'm moving over to the camera I have over here because I think that'll be a little bit easier. So about 1 inch in and 3/4 of an inch down. You start from the back. So you go from the back in and you push and you make sure that you put the needle through one of the holes in the Ida cloth. You see that the Ida cloth is made of interwoven fabric and we have all of these little holes. Our needle is going to go through the holes. Do your best to make sure that every time you stitch, you make sure the needle is going through the holes. It'll make sure that the pattern is neater, that it doesn't get lopsided, and honestly, it just makes it easier for you. So I pull my needle through and I begin to pull the thread through. And now this is where you have to be a little bit cautious because you see, yeah, there we go. You see as I'm threading it, those extra 4 inches that I just left loose are being pulled through, and that's fine. And then I'm pulling the whole length through. And now we're getting to about 1 inch to 1/2 of an inch of thread left. So you can see the back looks like that. If you want to, you can try to make a knot here, but honestly I find that those knots usually get pulled through the hole anyway. So what I recommend you do is you just take your index finger or your middle finger and you hold down that thread. So I'm pinching the back of my thread and there's the front of it. And now we're gonna start sewing. So holding down a thread, and what you want to do is you want to go to a diagonal hole. You see that we have these 4 holes make a little box, and we start at the bottom left hole, and then we're going to go to the top right hole. You put your needle there, and then you pull it through. Once again, hold on to the back. And what you're left with is a little diagonal line. So we can see our tiny diagonal line. If you were making a bunch of little boxes in a row, just like a straight barrier, you would then put your needle from the back to the front right underneath that hole and pull through. Oops. There we go. And so you see we have our little diagonal line and then the needles come out. But we are only making one little box. We're not making a solid line. So we're gonna do the distinctive crossover. Here's a diagonal. We need to put a diagonal on top of it, going from the bottom right hand to the top left hand. Push the needle through and pull the thread. And now I have a little X. And all we do to make this pattern is we're going to make a bunch of X's over and over and over again. There's our back. Here is our tiny little X. Okay. like I said, we're starting from this X. If you're doing this on your own, you can then choose to go down or choose to go across. I'm going to choose to go down because then I can more easily define how big my bookmark is going to be. You're going to make an X in every other square on the fabric. And it looks like we're going to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. We're going to make 14 of these X's. So let's do that now. The same basic motion, you're just going to kind of do the same basic motion. Right now, because I made my X, this hanging piece of thread is fairly secure, but I'm still going to hold on to it at least temporarily so I don't accidentally pull it out. You always want to start on the bottom left circle in the square, pull through, and then go into the top right hole and pull through. You go down to the bottom right hole, pull through from the back, and then go to the top left hole, making your X. So now you see we have 2 X's. And we're just going to do this over and over again. Here's what the back should approximately look like right now, but honestly, if the back ends up really messy, that's okay. The back of your cross stitch piece usually doesn't have to look very nice. It's usually covered by something anyway. You just want to try to make the front look as pretty as you can. And if you're a new cross stitcher, sometimes it takes a while to get really good at keeping the front or keeping the back as tidy as the front. Seriously, don't worry about it. If this is your first time doing a cross stitch, and just have fun. So I'm gonna keep repeating this pattern. It's also okay if you personally need to keep turning your fabric front to back to check it. Like I've done a lot of cross stitching, so I've got some muscle memory in place about how it's supposed to go, but if you need to turn it over and kind of look where the hole is and then turn it back and double check and then turn it over to make sure that it's getting pulled through fine and then turn it over to make your little X, that's okay too. While you're doing this, you might get some periodic snags. So just go slowly and try to pull those out. Don't rip at it or yank at it really hard. It's hard to replicate a snag, but if I get one, I'll show you how to fix it. But basically, you just want to try to like gently loosen the snag. If you can't lightly pull it, you can either leave it, finish doing what you're doing, and then cut it out later, or cut the thread and start again. Oh good, I've got a little snag. Okay, make sure this is working. All right, so as you can see, I was keeping it pretty neat. This is actually the top and I'm going down, but I've got this little snag. Sometimes the thread just snarls. See if I can get it. And there we go. And if you look here, this is actually a little knot, and then this ended up being a loop. And what you want to do is you want to put your needle in the tiny loop that was created, and you kind of want to gently pull it free. Now when I did that, it turned out, so I'm going to move this away because I think it's autofocusing. It turned out that I was pulling at the wrong loop. That's why you want to go slowly and not just yank. So instead, I'm going to put my needle here, and I'm going to slowly pull it up, and my knot is gone. And that's just how you fix a knot in cross stitch. You try to gently pull it free. If you just yank at the thread, you can often make the knot worse. So just try to gently pull it free and then keep on stitching. Oops, got another knot. Let's fix that. See? Pulling free. So you did what it was supposed to do. And then it gets really small and tight. So you put your needle in the big part and then just, and it's done. No more knot. Okay. Okay. So I have to count and see how many of these little X's should be on my side, and we said it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So it's 14. And then if I count my little X's over here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and I'm currently on my 12th. So that's fine. So let's finish up. So this is as long as one of my sides going to be. As you can tell, I didn't quite get it perfectly center, and you know that's why you generally want to start in the middle of a pattern. But I still have plenty of white edge. We're gonna fold it over anyway. It's okay. All right. So what we need to do is, because I went from top to bottom, now I need to go from left to right. So we're gonna go top to bottom and then left to right. And remember, they're all evenly spaced apart, so I just have to put a little X to the right of it. And then I'm just gonna follow this line all the way to the right. There are quite a few little X's running along this bottom, more than 14. So at this point you can kind of just start making your little X's and just keep going and chill out. I guess when you feel like you're far enough, start counting so you don't miss them. But for right now, just kind of zone out and enjoy yourself. Okay, even though we're not all the way across on our pattern, I am going to just stop right there for a minute. This is because, as you may have guessed, cross-stitching is actually a pretty lengthy process. I'm a fairly quick cross-stitcher, and it took me about 2.5 hours of consistent work to make this little bookmark right here, this one. And that's what you're gonna do. So it might take you anywhere between 2 and 4 hours to do this project, and that's okay. Most of the time when we cross stitch, we're not thinking about that we're gonna sit down and finish this project immediately. It's usually something that you do over a good length of time. So if you're binge watching a TV show, if you're watching a movie, like maybe you're watching all the Lord of the Rings or Hobbit movies, or you're at a large lengthy celebration with family or friends or something, you can just get out your cross stitch and you can start stitching. But I do want to show you how we kind of cut off the thread when we're done with it, and also how you're going to do some of these letters. Okay, so let's say that you are done with your thread. Maybe you finished whatever it is you need to cross stitch, or maybe you've used up the thread and you want to just stop using it. We do need to tie it off in some manner. I also recommend that you kind of tie off your thread when there is about this much, about an inch of excess thread over near your needle. It's about an inch of that left. If you wait too long, it's going to be hard for you to tie this off. So don't try to just use up all of the thread. It's okay if there's some left over. Like I said, you have plenty of thread. So to tie off your thread, you go to the back of the pattern and you're going to want to loop around the needle underneath some of your older stitches, kind of like this. You see how it's underneath the stitches? And then you're going to pull. And I recommend doing this a few times. Sorry. Loop and pull, and that'll keep it fairly sturdy. And then when you've looped and pulled it 2 or 3 times, you can cut off whatever little bit of excess is. And you'll have something fairly sturdy that shouldn't come undone. And it'll essentially just kind of look like that right there. A little tail left over. But like I said, I wanted to show you how to do some of the letters. My needle came unthreaded, which will also happen. So let's rethread it. Rethread the needle. And make sure there's about that 4 or so inches left over. As you see, I've used up some of my thread, but not all of it, so I've got some good amount left. Another reason that I wanted you to try to make the border first is that it gets a little bit easier to figure out where you're supposed to be. And I'd like to just start with the I'm, because that's fairly easy to start. You can see right here that the very top of the I lines up in the same row. Let's get this a little bit closer. Lines up in the same row as this X, but that there are 1, 2, 3 blank squares between that X and the first stitch in the I. We can also see that this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up. So we're going to do a little bit of counting. Cross stitching is actually a surprising amount of counting. So remember I said it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's this little X that we want to stay in line with. Here's my needle push through to remind myself. And then we said there were 3 blank squares. So this is 1, see my needle, 2, 3, And then this is the start of my first X. It also is supposed to line up with this one. So if you bring your finger over here and you trace it, you can see that it does line up. So we've done a good job. We have it. So we're gonna do what we always do when we start cross stitching, is we pull it through from the back and use one of our fingers to hold down that excess thread. Remember, you want about 1/2 inch to 1 inch of excess, whatever makes you most comfortable. And then we're just gonna start sewing bottom left to top right. We also count the pattern and we see we need to make 4 squares. So there's 1. And so this time, since they're all in a row, we're gonna make our diagonal before we cross it over. And there's 2 diagonals next to each other, 3 diagonals next to each other, and here's the 4th diagonal next to each other. Now we need to cross over. So remember, bottom right, top left, bottom right, top left, bottom right, top left, bottom right, top left. And so we now have that top line in our eye. That's looking pretty good. Now we have to do the next line in the eye, which is just 2 X's underneath this. So once again, we do a little counting. That's the edge, and we have to go 1 over. And then we have to make 2 squares. Remember, we're going to do our diagonal first. So bottom left, top right, bottom left, top right. Then we're going to go back. Bottom right, top left, bottom right, top left. And we've ended up with our first 2 rows in the eye. Still looking pretty good. And now I'm just going to try to finish this eye. So I'm going to have to do quite a few of these little rows that only have 2 squares. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need to do 5 of these rows with 2 squares, and then I need to do 1 row with 4. So let's make that happen. Alright, and you can see we have our little eye all done. There's the back, doesn't look too bad, and there's our whole eye. Good for us. Okay. So the next part of the pattern is you have to make your little apostrophe. There are neater ways to do this, and usually I would try to do it a bit neater. But like I said, if we're just starting out, we don't have to be super neat. But what we see is there is a blank square next to the eye, so we gotta leave that blank, and then we make one single X. So I've measured this, and I'm going bottom left, top right, bottom left, top right. There's the start of our apostrophe, and then I have to make a square directly below it, and then one a little bit diagonal to it. And there we go. We have our apostrophe. Looks pretty good. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to make that M, and as you can see, you have to leave one square blank, and then you're going to start here and do a line of 4 X's. So there's 1, and we can start our 4. And there we go. That's the first line of our M. There's our back, not looking too shabby. And that's what we have. And honestly, this is where I'm going to leave you for this video. It really kind of is this easy, where you just have to make diagonals and then cross them over. You have to do some counting. You got to make sure that you're looking over at your pattern, because your pattern will tell you what you need to do. So I recommend that you just go slow, read over the pamphlet on how to do cross stitching, and if you have any questions, please reach out to me at my email, which is cindy.butor@pspl.org. We'll put that in the description so you can know, and feel free to ask me any questions and I'll do my best to help you. Also, if you actually finish your bookmark and want to share it with us, please do that as well. If you would like another cross stitch program, let us know, and I just hope you have a good time. I'm also going to, in a second video, show you how to finish off your bookmark. As you can see from this one that I made earlier, it's fairly simple. All I did was I folded it over and then pressed it down with an iron. And you can either just leave it looking like this, where it's a little bit untidy, but it's totally serviceable. You can also get some fabric tape and tape it closed. You can get some fabric glue and glue it closed. Or, as I'm going to show you, we're going to take a little piece of felt and we're just going to put the felt on the back and make it look nice. So that's it. So look forward to that second video in which I show you how to finish off our bookmark. But I hope that you enjoyed coming here and learning how to cross stitch, and I do hope that you finish your bookmark and you show us what it is that you made and let us know what you thought of the program. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I hope you have a great day. Okay, bye-bye.